What is your church doing to prepare for life after lockdown? Part of my own professional practice involves working with church leaders or coaches who work with church leaders. At the end of a recent conversation with a church leader, I was asked to jot down any thoughts I might have on how churches can respond to the emerging post-lockdown world. So here we go. And as always, with coaching questions, reflect on the thoughts you're drawn to and assume that the others are offered for someone else. The overriding question I offer to explore is this. If you were setting your church up for the first time, how would you configure it? One of the reasons that Christianity is a global faith is its ability to adapt to different cultural situations without compromising its core beliefs. When Christian missionaries have moved from their existing cultures into new ones, the difference between the two were generally obvious. A Christian moving from Sao Paulo to Somalia will notice obvious differences in dress, the pace of life, social customs, food and language. But what's more difficult to recognise is when the culture you are already in is changing. Mission pioneer Mike Breen talks about the sense of disorientation he felt when he realised, and here I quote, "I was trained for a world that no longer existed." It's now generally held that 2020 has marked something of a watershed in world history. So before reflecting on the internal questions, what, as a church, do we need to do that's the same or different, it's probably helpful to consider the external question. What's changing in the culture and society in which we live? And the obvious place to start is with the way people are now engaging with your church online, people who never previously engaged with it in person. As churches have worked more in the online space, they've had remarkable increases in the interest from people who previously had no association with them. I personally know of churches that have increased their membership as well as building new relationships with people totally online. But tantalisingly, we also know that there are people making the choice to view church services but without making any direct contact. What do you do with them? How would your church feel about providing services, discipling opportunities and online support for people who you will never meet this side of eternity? Are you drawn to winding down your virtual offerings as you invite people to join your physical meetings, or also to treat this anonymous online community as a group in which you choose to continue to share your life of faith? And how do you respond to that in the light of the question with which I started this section? If you were setting up your church for the first time, how would you configure it? Let's move on from the external to the internal and use two questions to reflect on what you've discovered about yourselves over the past year and a half. Here's the first one. What new talent have you discovered during lockdown? Many churches have discovered people with online communication skills. There are particular skills communicating in physical settings, and church leaders have honed these over years of practice. But the skill of speaking into a camera with no feedback or interaction from an audience is a skill in itself. Who have you discovered who is really not that good at the first way of communicating, but who is quite brilliant at the second? Second, you may have discovered people with skills at managing change in a period of uncertainty. Allow me to share an anecdote. Early in the pandemic, a friend told me about the following conversation he'd had with a church leader. Over the course of his ministry, the leader in question had developed a highly successful default way of responding to challenges. He knew that whatever he was facing, there was always someone he could contact who'd faced something similar, and who could, therefore, share the benefits of their relevant experience. There was, if you like, always someone who could show him their map of a similar journey and how they navigated it. But in the pandemic, this leader discovered that his usual support network was now as lost as he was. There was no map. His problem wasn't so much losing his maps of the world. His problem was losing the world on which his previous maps had been based. So what he needed wasn't a map reader, but an explorer, someone with the skills to navigate unknown territory. At the very least, this could be someone who could help him navigate the unknown world safely. At best, this will be someone who could help him make new discoveries, someone who could help him draw new maps of his own. Who have you found with these sorts of skills? What other new skills and talents have emerged that have enabled you to navigate this period of unprecedented change? Now, if you've identified these or other new treasures in your church, it might be worth asking this question. Why has God given them to you? Are they gifts to help you through a crisis, or are they foundational stones with which to build for the future? For a reason why the second option may be the more likely, let's return to the focus we started, how the world is changing around us, and reflect for a moment on the increasing regularity with which we seem to be encountering situations that we just didn't see coming. Here's three. The 1980s saw the first serious indication of the global climate crisis. We had the sudden global banking crisis of 2007-8, and now we have the global pandemic of 2020. And the key word in all of these is global. We're long past the point of living in a world where we can assume that a crisis in one part of the world will be geographically contained. Our interdependent, interconnected world is one that makes us vulnerable to unforeseen global threats. One of the reasons for not being able to spot new threats could be that they're emerging in places which are outside our usual field of vision. What have you discovered this year that increases your confidence in your church's ability to respond effectively to the next unknown unknown? My final question emerges from a combination of a conversation with a friend and UK church leader and reading a recent book by Pope Francis. As we find ourselves in this moment, this in-between moment of the gradual ending of pandemic restrictions and of coming to terms with the emerging world, the question my friend posed was this. If we took the view that this moment was something given for us, rather than something being done to us, what is this moment for? In his intriguing and provocative book, Let Us Dream, Pope Francis gives his own answer. This is a moment to dream, and to dream big, to rethink our priorities, what we value, what we want, what we seek, and to commit to act in our daily lives on what we have dreamed of. What I hear at this moment is similar to what Isaiah hears God saying through him. Come, let us talk this over. Let us dare to dream. What are you hearing at the moment? What's the conversation you need to be having in this moment? And in this given moment, how is your church preparing for life after lockdown?